when you go and you want to build a new werewolf character or a new druid character, you have all those aspects to play with from level 1 as soon as you want to start kind of like leveling up gear and getting into a position where you can make use of them.
That's
We
right.
love this idea of like making it so it's easier to go play with other builds.
Yeah, I love too how we've really been thinking about crafting in Diablo 4, and I love how the occultist figures into that crafting, right? Because, when we think about legendaries in Diablo 4, what we're really talking about is the legendary power. And that legendary power can be moved around. You can use it to upgrade rares, and the occultist is sort of the central point of all of that crafting loop.
That's absolutely right. So that was one big change we add with, and we've talked about in previous blogs before. But one big change in Diablo 4 is allowing legendary powers of a particular type to roll on lots of different item slots, which gives players an interesting game of deciding where they want to place certain powers to make the maximum use of them for their builds. Now, the Codex lets them put them on the slots that are appropriate for that power. They can choose, right? But another limitation for the Codex power, in addition to not actually having the ability to collect all of legendary powers in the game, there's many, many more for you to find as you're playing through Diablo 4. Those powers also are always rolled at the lowest level of power possible. So it is always better for you to go find a legendary item that has the power that you're interested in, and then you can choose to use that item directly or extract the power from that item into an aspect crystal, then go in and print into your own item of your choosing. So those legendary items you find out in the world are always going to end up being more powerful as a general rule.
Yeah, I really like the idea that like no matter what, like finding stuff is still going to lead to like potentially the best opportunity of getting the most amount of power, but you still have the customization ability of being able to, I found this power, I would still like to use this on another piece of gear and add that within the Codex of Power, and you still can.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's great about it. Exactly to that point is that you can have, let's say that you are leveling up and you get a legendary power that you really love, and you start to sort of make your build around it. With the Codex of Power, you can acquire new gear, and in fact through essences as well. And you can extract, you can bring that power with you, so you can maintain that build. So you're not losing a core part of your build as you're getting new gear.
Yeah, and the fun thing about this is that we do want players as they're beginning to go through their class phase, they're making their skill tree selections, they're going deeper and deeper into this, they're making their fun choices. We do want them to be able to still want to chase certain other powers. Like, for example, for this, kind of like melee-focused lightning build, the player here is participating in right now. Like, there are other powers that they really, really want for this build. Like, there's a lightning bolt legendary that is going to allow lightning orb legendary. It's going to allow them to have the spear basically orbit around them as part of combat, which, as you can see, would be awesome when they're teleporting into packs of monsters and trying to deal damage when they're up and close and personal. So there's lots more things for that lightning sword to collect as they're going through, and then hopefully find the very best versions of those legendary powers as well as just find it in the first place.
Yeah, so I know with the Codex of Power, this is kind of a new feature that's coming in Diablo 4, and we'll have more information and more details regarding like different.
And an aspect in the Codex of Power is effectively a legendary power that's been put in this very particular form. And every one of these dungeons that players progress through in the overworld has a unique legendary power via the aspect found inside of them.
Yeah. What I love about that is that you can create a new character, and you can look at some of the powers that are available through these dungeons and say, okay, I really want to target this power. I'm going to go to this dungeon, get that power. So you're less dependent on like, well, I hope this power drops.
Absolutely. So there are limitations in place, but Joe, to your point, that is basically the intent here, right? Is to give players some manner and measure of control over the nature of their build as they're beginning to go through those steps. But the Codex of Power is a way for them to basically take these aspects, and then they're able to go back to a crafter back in one of the major cities, our new occultist crafter, actually. And when they go to the occultist, they can hand off actually, we're showing it right now. Our sorcerer's friend has just earned aspect of overwhelming bolts, which is going to allow her charge bolts ability to go and fire 2 more projectiles with each cast. She's going for like an up close and personal melee lightning build. So this shotgun approach for her spenders will be really, really useful. More bolts, more damage, definitely very good. Minor trade-off for the mana cost, but still what ends up being worth it in the end. Here we can see that the sorceress is now heading over to the occultist and is going to be choosing to imbue this aspect into one of their existing items. So she takes the item. So you're looking at a lot of work in progress stuff that we're looking at here, because this is a live cast. We'd like to be able to show some things off. You have an opportunity to go and basically override the existing legendary power on this and put in the new power they've just collected to the Codex of Power. So in this way, players get this deterministic way to kind of collect a series of these legendary powers that are out there in the game for them to find, but it's not all of them. You can only find some of the legendary powers overall in the game. There are over 120 dungeons in the game. So this represents like a lot of really exciting and interesting things for you to collect as you're going through these areas. Also, you don't just find legendary powers for your class. You'll find legendary powers for all of the classes as you go, and some ones that can work on multiple classes as well. And then we think this is really cool because every time you find an aspect through one that you can put into your Codex of Power, this is now available to all characters in that realm.
A world boss, and this boss looks pretty impressive, but you were noticing some similarities to other D3 bosses, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. You'll see later on, like in the clip, when it kind of does some summons where like it summons some treasure goblins, kind of eerily similar to Greed from Diablo 3, where you take your puzzle ring and put that in the cube so that you could get this kind of like secret level. But yeah, it's a pretty big spectacle, having a big boss out in the field with, I tried to count them. There's definitely at least 7 characters, but I think you can have up to 8, as they mentioned previously. There's the kind of the goblins running off. it saddens me that they don't try to chase them to kind of kill them to get the gear that presumably they would drop. But, hey, we're focusing on DPS on the world boss here. And I think the other one cool thing that I noticed is it kind of feels a little bit like Monster Hunter-y, where, at the start of the fight, the boss isn't as beat up. It doesn't have as many scars, but kind of like over time, you kind of see a little bit more like cuts and a little bit more bleeding from the boss. But yeah, just cool to have an open area where you can kind of team up with other players and kind of tackle a big boss, and get some hopefully good gear.
We're getting some PvP here, which is something they're kind of bringing back, right? It was pretty big in D2, but was absent in D3.
Yeah, like it's cool to see it come back. There's definitely a lot of folks that enjoy PvP. So don't know how it'll interact with, what end game or like mid game looks like, or what kind of rewards you even get from it. But, it does give that extra flavor of kind of builds and gear that you might want to use specifically for PvP that might not be necessarily good for PvE, but, is catered to just fighting other players. Diablo timeline, but I know there's a lot of folks that enjoy the class, and we're getting to see kind of just some tried and true, right? Some corpse explode and kind of going through a dungeon with just a golem, which is interesting because the Necro's known so much for being a summoner class, and we're gonna see some variations of the Necromancer gameplay throughout this kind of first clip. We'll kind of let this play through a little bit, and then I can get into some of the other stuff in a little bit. Now we're out in the kind of like open world. Here, different class kind of build here. You have skeletal warriors, you have skeletal mages. What looks like maybe teeth from kind of Diablo II or a variation of bone spear, as well as some cursing going on. We don't get context in terms of like what exactly each of those skills are. The only thing that I saw through these clips that we got are just more about the different variations for the summoning, which is the primary core of a necromancer. But I can kind of break some of those down. So the skeletal warriors that are kind of out there right now are probably either skirmishers or reapers. There's three variations: skirmishers, defenders, and reapers. The defender, which is the only tooltip that we got through this kind of gameplay, is geared towards having durable shield bearers with 15% more life. You'll see some defender skeletal warriors later in the later part of this clip, but you can upgrade it one of two ways. One of the ways, every 10 seconds your skeletal defenders will negate the next instance of direct damage they would take. If you decide to want to sacrifice it, which is one of the three options, you'll gain 15% non-physical resistance, but you'll no longer be able to raise skeletons. The skeletal mages, there's three options. There's shadow, cold, and bone. For example, with cold, as one of the upgrades, each time your cold mages damage enemies with their primary attack, you gain 2 essence. If you want to sacrifice the cold skeletal mage, you'll deal 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, but again, no longer able to summon skeletal mages. And then with the golems, there's bone, blood, or iron. In this clip, you're seeing iron, so I'll just break down what iron does. Iron golem will slam the ground and stun enemies, and every 5th iron golem attack causes a shockwave, dealing X% damage to primary enemy and enemy behind it. That's one of the 2 upgrades for the iron golem. And then if you decide to sacrifice the iron golem, you'll deal 30% increased critical strike damage, but you can't summon a golem anymore. I've never enjoyed the summoning aspect of necromancers, even though that's kind of what the class does. So it's kind of cool to have this passive ability of trading off your summons to make your necromancer stronger, essentially. But what we're seeing in this clip is you have the defender skeletal warriors that I mentioned, as well as the iron golem. There's legendaries that they're not picking up, presumably to keep some of that hidden, although I know a lot of folks probably want to see what those are. And then you have either a bone spear kind of like variant where it is hitting the wall and then bouncing back and kind of making 3 bone shards, or like smaller bone shards. Don't know if that's an upgrade for like Bone Spear or Teeth. I'm not sure which one it is. That looks more like Bone Spear though. Or if it's kind of like a legendary effect that's like on one of the Necromancer's items right now on this specific character.
One thing to just note, a lot of that information you gathered from a build that's not final. So like some of that could change.